everybody, I'm back with another review. I know it's been a while, but I am currently in the process of filming several reviews at once. I am a freelance artist in my personal life, and I have several commissions that I've been working on, and so I've been really busy in my personal life and haven't had an opportunity to film videos the way that I would love to. So because of that, I have chosen to watch a bunch of movies in my private time and collect notes and data and do a lot of thinking and do a lot of work behind the scenes. And then when I had a little bit of spare time in my private life, I decided to record a bunch of videos in bulk so that I can give you a bunch of videos spaced out but at once, sort of, so that you don't have to go as long without them. So for that reason, I will be getting started with a new movie review today, and I'm really excited to share it with you. Let's get started. Sometimes I think that simpler films tend to be severely misunderstood and underrated and sometimes even oversimplified. Unfortunately, I feel that the film that I'm reviewing today might be one of those films. Why Don't You Just Die is a 2018 dark, blood-soaked Russian comedy that on the surface seems like a Russian version of a modern-day Quentin Tarantino film, or maybe even like a modern-day Mortal Kombat fight scene turned into a Russian cinematic piece with a 1 hour and 40-minute runtime. But instead, it takes a deeper look at generational trauma, Russian society as a whole, systemic corruption, greed, moral corruption, and how when you move through life with genuine altruistic motives, evil cannot touch you. Mix that in with a little stylized cinematic kinetic camera work where the camera motions mock the motion within the fight scenes, increased saturation and color of the film, and the setting, non-linear storytelling, and chaotic fight scenes, complete with gore and lots of blood. And you have a film with a lot to say through more action and less words. This film really is about the action. The action in some ways is almost kind of cartoonish. People flying through tables, TVs being thrown, holes through walls. You get a lot of overdramatic examples of a fight scene. Instead of someone being hit in the head with something and falling over, maybe the way it would be in real life, someone gets hit in the head and tossed across the room and thrown through a table, and it's very dramatic. Almost like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. It's dramatic and silly and comedic, but in a really dark and kind of grotesque way. Like I said before, Why Don't You Just Die is a 2018 Russian dark comedy thriller. It's about a young man named Matvey who tries to murder his girlfriend's abusive father, who just happens to be a police detective. The father's name, Andrei, he has kind of a troubled past where he does some shady things for money. And not just any money, it's American money, which is interesting because this film takes place in Russia. As a matter of fact, it takes place in one room, one apartment building room that this family lives in. The film is directed by, and I will mispronounce his name because I am not fluent in Russian, Kirill Sokolov. I'm sorry. He's known for his stylized, over-the-top violent films, and they give this very Pulp Fiction-esque or Reservoir Dogs feeling to them. He gives multiple characters throughout the film, and just as he introduces a new character, you get a flashback of that character's past. Their motives, their greed, the things that motivate them throughout the film to why they do the things that they do. The film is told in chapters, with the narration going back and forth through flashbacks. The stories are interconnected with the characters, so you may get a flashback of Matvey's past, but then you'll also get a flashback of his girlfriend's past. And what Matvey remembers from his story and the past and the interactions between him and his girlfriend are vastly different than what happened in his girlfriend's past and what she remembers and her motivations. You can currently watch this film on YouTube or Google TV or even Amazon Prime. If you don't have a subscription, currently it's available for rental for $1.99, which is fairly cheap and inexpensive if you would like to watch it. This director also had another breakout film that was also a big cinematic hit titled They Will Kill You in 2026. This film was also very stylized. Same with the kinetic movement throughout fight scenes. Same with lots of blood. Same with lots of action. Dark humor. Very same vibes as Why Don't You Just Die? So he's clearly got a specific style that he's going for with his films. However, They Will Kill You only received a 6.3 on IMDb, whereas this film overall ranked higher on many of the online ranking platforms. This one ranked 6.8 on IMDb. As I said before, this film is rated 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb. It got a 97 on Rotten Tomatoes for the tomato meter. And then for the audience score, it got an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes. And then on Letterboxd, it got a 3.6 out of 5. I will also be giving this film a score using my own personal scoring system in another section of this video. Now I'm going to share some of the triggers that this movie has. This part we will probably veer a little bit into the spoiler territory. So if you're one of those people who do not want to know anything about a movie prior to going into it, I would probably stop my video now at this point, go watch the movie, then come back and watch the rest of my video so that you can get my insight, my thoughts, my deep analysis on what I thought of this movie, and share your thoughts and deep analysis in the comments below, and maybe we can get a conversation going. So let's go ahead and give you a moment to stop. Okay, now we're diving into the triggers. So some of the things in this movie that you may want to be aware of prior to watching it. This movie has constant violence throughout it. There is constantly the threat of violence. There's constant verbal violence, physical violence, just the air of violence throughout this entire movie. There's also cursing in this movie. You need to be aware of that. Although if you are an English speaker, this movie is in Russian, so you will be reading subtitles. However, there are some people who still don't want to see the curse words, so be aware that there is cursing in this movie. There is also some drug and alcohol usage in this movie. There is vodka. It is Russia. Also vodka being poured on bodies as well, not just drank. And then there's also a white powdered substance and a number of pills that can be seen in this movie as well. And then in terms of the more explicit content, the daughter does allege in this movie that her father abused her in a non-consensual manner. That is something that is stated very early on in the movie. And that is a big plot point for the movie and why Matvey goes to the father's apartment. It's kind of what kicks off the entire movie. So you need to be aware that that is one of the main topics of the movie. However, you don't see that occur, but it is described in a very emotional scene by the girlfriend to the boyfriend. That is a discussion that's had in the movie. There's a lot of physical violence in this movie. There is lots of blood. There is torture. And by torture, I mean like drills into legs, handcuffing to bathtubs, all sorts of, like TVs being thrown at people, people being hit, people being shot at, people falling onto furniture, people being disrespected and smacked with things. There's male on female violence, there's male on male violence, you name it. There is a scene where these two cops are investigating a crime scene, and you see the criminal, and he's covered in blood, and there is body parts of a dead woman. So you see feet and hands, and when I say body parts, they are dismembered body parts. So they're very clearly at a crime scene where someone has dismembered someone. And so that is in the movie. Be aware of that. But yeah, there are characters attacked with various weapons, various things that wouldn't even be considered weapons, but are turned into weapons in this movie. And then there is also a disturbing scene with some children in this movie where they are playing this game in a bathroom in a school where they are trying to stop each other's hearts. You might have had friends when you were little where you try to, I don't know, you might have remembered the game that kids used to play with pencils where they would press each other between the knuckles to try to get their hands to open. That's a more harmless version of that. But in this movie, there is a scene where these children are trying to stop each other's heart. It's like a little game they're playing, so that's kind of traumatic. None of them die and don't resuscitate, just so you're aware. And then there is also a character that hangs themselves in this movie. And there is death in this movie as well. So those are the triggers for this movie. It certainly isn't the grossest movie I've seen, but you also have to keep in mind I watch a lot of movies and I have seen some pretty intense movies. But it is definitely a bloody movie. So there is lots of blood and there is some gore in this movie. So be aware of that. So now it's time to give this movie my personal score. I'm going to use my lovely template that I created. And I'm going to start with creativity. Now, creatively, I think this movie does a lot of really cool things. I think the kinetic movement with the camera and every time someone gets hit or falls, the motion of the camera falling with them or going with someone's fist or the TV as it's getting thrown, I think that's beautiful. I think it's wonderful. I think that comes from the director's background. I could be wrong. I'm not going to speak on that too much because I'm not sure of it. But I think he has a background in other things besides film. And I think that that's where that comes from. However, that combined with the wonderful props and blood effects and just everything, the fight choreography. So creatively, I'm going to give that a 4 out of 5 because I think that that's a very fair score. Was there anything super profound that I've absolutely never seen in a movie before? No, but was it done in a way that was appealing and aesthetically nice to watch? Absolutely. And it was done in a way that was refreshing and fun and enjoyable. So for that, I will give it a 4 out of 5. Now, for originality, I am going to dock a few points on this one. And I know that I'll probably catch some slack for that. But I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 because I think that as much as I would love to give this film a higher score on originality, it's only fair to give it 3 out of 5 because as I was researching things for this film and to do my review, the same things kept popping up for articles and things about this film, which was this film was being compared, or this director's style was being compared to a few other directors, one of which was Quentin Tarantino. And I can't necessarily say that this film is 100% original. However, I do want to say that I don't think comparing this director, 100% to Quentin Tarantino is fair because I see a lot of differences. I do think this director has some very deep, profound messages in his films that I just did not get from any Quentin Tarantino films. I do also think that this director is doing some more heavier, clunkier things with his motion that Quentin never did. I like the burly, heavy, chunky TV vibes to some of his motions in his films. And it was the same for the other movie that he created. And I wish I could explain it in some other way, but there's a style to Quentin's movies where it's like sleek, smooth swords and like someone gets cut and the blood like sprays everywhere like water. And that's just simply not how these movies are. There is some differences there where there's much more clunkiness to it, much more realism to it. Are there similarities there? Of course. But there are also differences. And I think the director deserves to hear that although there are a lot of people comparing his film and his style to some of these other directors who he may even consider that he may consider that like a compliment to some degree, or he may not. I don't know him personally. But he also deserves to hear that his art is being seen as his art. There is a unique style to it, and I am seeing it for the uniqueness that it has. But I did dock a few points because when you have the amount of people that you have online just distinctively saying, yep, that reminds me of that, then you have to dock something for originality. So for that, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. Although I do want to shout this director out. I'm seeing what you're doing, and I'm liking what you're putting down. I like your work. I like your work, sir. In terms of my personal score, I'm going to give this movie a 4 out of 5. I did really, really enjoy this movie. I thought the themes of this movie were really impactful. I thought the character of Matt V was very lovable. I thought he was kind of like this fumbling, just kind of oaf type of character that was just so... it was almost like he didn't really know what he was doing, but he was doing it. And I loved that about him. I loved, even though Andre was so despicable, I loved Andre. Really, the writing in this film did it for me. And I know that, you know, you fall in love with different aspects of different films, but for this one, the character development, the kinetic motions of the film, there were certain aspects that really sold it for me. So for that, this personal score is going to be a 4 out of 5 for me. With the acting, just by what I was describing before with my personal score, you already know that the acting is going to get a 5 out of 5 for me. The actors did phenomenal in this movie. Atvi's character was 100% believable for who he was. Andre's character, 100% believable for who he was. The police detective buddy, I believe that he was this grieving, poor police detective who's been wronged, and the mother, I believe she was this distraught, confused woman. Like, I believed all of their characters 100%. I could have 100% believed that these were real people. The acting was phenomenal. All of these actors and actresses deserve to be in more films. 5 out of 5 for the acting. Great job. Storyline, for me, the storyline is going to be a 4 out of 5. And I dive more into this in my analytical part of this review. This movie is not what it seems at the surface level. At the surface level, you may watch this movie and think it is like a stereotypical Quentin Tarantino film, where it is a revenge film, where somebody comes in and they get their revenge and it's a bloodbath. But that is not what this film is. There's so much more beautiful, in-depth storytelling that is occurring within this film. And you just have to peek below the surface just a little bit to understand what's going on in this film. And for that reason, I'm choosing to give this film a 4 out of 5 for the storyline. I think it has so many good messages in it that deserve to be uncovered. So my overall score is a 20 out of 25, which is an 80 out of 100, which is a score of a B. I think that's pretty fair for this movie. I think I really enjoyed this movie. On Letterboxd, I gave it 3.5 stars. I wrote a review on Letterboxd as well, and once this video is completed, I will also link this video onto my Letterboxd so that you can enjoy both this and my written review as well. Now I would like to get into the more analytical part of my video where I analyze the movie and some of the kind of overarching themes that I noticed. Now, like I said in the beginning of this video, I think it's very easy to watch this movie and simply write it off as just a action-packed bloodbath thriller, dark comedy where all these characters are fighting and doing all of these heinous things to one another and then just leave it at that. But that is simply not what this movie is. There is more to this movie than just it being this all-out brawl. And I want to talk about that a little bit. There's some themes that are occurring in this movie that I think are important to address, and I want to discuss those with you right now. So the first theme that I would like to discuss is Andrei, the father, represents authoritative Russia and the unchecked power that an authoritative government may have. So in this movie, Andrei, the father figure, he kind of represents this authoritative power in the movie, kind of like an authoritative Russian state or like authoritative Russian institutions. He represents this patriarchal state system. He demands like all the power. And what I mean by that is throughout the movie, you will see that he demands subservience from everyone. He demands it from his daughter. He wants her to follow him, to listen to him, be his subservient daughter. He demands it from his wife. He often demeans his wife. He smacks her on the head. He talks down to her. He does not see her as an equal in any sense of the word. And he even talks down to his partner, the police detective that works with him. He talks down to him. He doesn't share the money that he acquires with him. So he's very selfish, self-centered, and he expects everyone to be subservient to him. If he does not receive this subservience that he demands from everyone, he will basically crush anyone that challenges his control and his dominance. And we see this with Matvey. When Matvey shows up with the hammer to seek revenge for his girlfriend and what occurred to her when she was younger, we see that Andrei is just threatened. He will not simply stand for it. And that is what you often see with authoritarian governments. Anyone that questions their power must be squashed. And so that's essentially what you have with this storyline. You have this huge power, and then you have someone questioning it. And I thought the way that it depicted the idea of Andrei being that power and Matvey being this source that questions it, I thought the way they did that was just excellent. The next topic I want to discuss is how this small apartment is intentional and doesn't just make the characters feel trapped, but also is intentional to make the audience feel trapped. So almost the entirety of the modern events happening in this film take place within this family's apartment. Anything that doesn't take place within the apartment is a flashback. And because of this, the viewer, as well as the characters, often feel cramped and claustrophobic. And when large things happen, like fight scenes or arguments, or even just intense situations, like in the beginning of the movie, when Matvey and Andrei are sitting at the table just talking, you feel very claustrophobic. The room feels very small. And that's intentional. I think it's to make you feel like this situation is inescapable. It makes you feel trapped, like there's no exit out of the situation that you are now in. That Matvey has no escape, and you also have no escape. And I feel like this is to mirror what it may feel like to live within an authoritarian society. It's to make you feel like when you were on the bottom, there is no out. And I thought it was depicted beautifully with the setting. I think the fact that it was all filmed within this little apartment for the most part probably helped a lot on the budget of the film, but also really helps develop this backstory or this underlying theme that the director was probably trying to create with this whole statement they were making about Russian society. So another theme that I want to talk about that occurs in this movie are the generational traumas and the gaps between generations within a society. The initial inciting incident in this film, or what this film is mostly about, is how the daughter or the girlfriend character in this film is manipulating her boyfriend, Matvey, into attempting this revenge plot or this murder plot against her father. So Matvey shows up at her father's apartment with a hammer and is going to attempt to murder him. Well, why is he doing this? He's doing this because his girlfriend claimed that she was abused by her father as a child. And you get this very intimate scene between Matvey and his girlfriend in a kitchen where she's sharing this very sad and pitiful story about how her biological father abused her when she was little, and you feel really bad for her. And so you can understand why Matvey felt compelled to act or do something on behalf of his girlfriend. In interviews, the writer-director of this film has come out to say that this specific issue really hit close to home for him because during the Me Too movement is when he got this idea. A lot of Russians were really connecting to big movements and ideas, and that one was resonating with a lot of them. And some of his friends were coming out and sharing their own personal stories, and as this was occurring, he thought about the idea of someone who would want to get revenge for someone who experienced a crime like that. And he also really was thinking about apartment westerns because he had never seen an apartment western before. And so he decided to create this story of someone getting revenge for someone that might have experienced something like what occurred during the Me Too movement, but in a setting where an apartment western might occur. And I think that he nailed that idea on the head completely because that's exactly what this film is. The rapid political and cultural shifts in Russia have resulted in a massive generational gap. It leads to breakdowns in communication, escalating aggression between parents and their children and elders and the youth. And honestly, Russia isn't the only place that this is occurring. We see this happening in other countries. I think this also recently happened. I could be wrong, but I think it was Nepal. So you will see this happening across the globe. This isn't just an idea unique to Russia, but this movie depicts this beautifully with the relationship specifically between the parents and their daughter. The storyline between the parents and their daughter that really drives this plot point along perfectly. Another theme in this movie that I want to discuss is how the violence being over the top might be more intentional than you think. So at first glance, you may be tempted to think that this movie is just a bloodbath, a Quentin Tarantino fight fest type of movie, right? But I think the violence is so cartoonishly garish at times that it's trying to make a statement. What I mean by that is the characters in this story have all reached a point where compromise is no longer an option. Their circumstances, the things they're experiencing, compromise, coexisting, coming to some kind of reasonable terms and communication, it just simply is no longer an option for any of these characters. And so what do you have when you have an animal that feels like they can no longer talk themselves out of a situation? They can no longer reason themselves out of a situation. Well, you have an animal that fights themselves out of a situation. And that's what you have in this movie. You have a bunch of people, animals, fighting themselves out of a situation. They're scared, vulnerable, and fighting for survival. And this is a true depiction of that. And it helps display generational lines even further that may be at play within society, or how two sides become so severely divided, how people no longer can communicate verbally, or they don't even see verbal communication as an answer. And so, therefore, the movie shows you that when people see verbal communication as no longer the answer, all they can turn to is a bloodbath. I think this movie uses that to its benefit. The final theme that I want to discuss is ethics, deceit, greed, how moral decay is becoming the new culture. I think that this director spent a lot of time in this film showing us how all the characters have lied, stolen money, harmed someone, betrayed someone else, or harmed someone else in some kind of way. They've all been unethical, greedy, deceitful. They've been shady in their morality, and it's catching up to them. And it shows what happens to people when they prioritize pure survival and wealth over their basic decency and their basic ethics. So, ironic enough, it does not end with the richest one or the most brute one surviving in the end. For that, you're going to have to watch the movie to see how it plays out, because I'm not going to spoil that part for you. But overall, the commentary on society's decay and what happens when a generation feels abandoned for money and power over just pure basic decency, it makes this film more than just a bloodbath and a fight. It shows depth to this movie that I feel deserves to be dove into a little bit more. So, at first glance, you may be tempted to write this movie off as a super dark humor, bloodbath, theatrical thing. But the reality is, it is a movie with a great message. It's written well. It's acted well. It has a beautiful set. It was filmed well. And honestly, I'm excited to see more of what this director has, more of what he has to write. And I think he's going to come out with some really creative, fun, dark, and probably bloody things for us in the realm of horror in the future. I think he has a lot to say about societal and social ideas. And overall, this was a fun watch, and I recommend it if you can stomach it. So that's going to be all for my review today. I hope you enjoyed this one. Like I said, I'm recording these in bulk. You may see me in similar backdrops, but different outfits. That's why I'm doing this, so that I can hopefully put one out a week. That's the goal. And while I'm putting one out a week, the goal is to ultimately also be filming while I'm doing that, so that I can kind of keep things going for a little while. We'll see how it goes. I'm not making any lavish promises, but this is a fun hobby for me. And even if you're not getting videos, I promise you I'm watching movies. I'm going to include my letterbox in the description below, so that even if you don't see reviews posted, you can at least follow my letterbox and see what I'm watching and reviewing there. If I do have a review up on YouTube, I will also be reviewing things in Letterboxd and linking my YouTube review in my Letterboxd. If you have any insightful things that you want to share about this movie, or any other movie that I review for that matter, please leave them in the comments below my videos. Please like and share my reviews. I would love for more people to see them. I would love for more film lovers to get to share their insights of what they thought of these movies. I'm not looking to really be famous or anything. I'm just looking to share my love of movies with people and my thoughts and ideas, and kind of hear what they have to say, and just talk about movies with people, you guys. I just want to talk about movies. So, thanks for giving me your time of the day, and I look forward to seeing you again with the next movie review. Bye.